the great insight of Rav Menachem Frumin, something which I think has become a consensus, is that if religion is at the heart of the problem in the Middle East, religion has to be part of this solution. Belief in God could separate people, but belief in God could bring people together. And I think the essential issue is if we feel that the God we love and believe in is different than the God they believe in, my belief in God will separate us. But if we believe that the same God that we pray to, that we love, who loves us, is the same God who they pray to, they love and loves them, our belief in God brings us together. We know that here in the yeshiva, there's once an entire summer that we studied the topic of God and humanity, and the truth which is mainstream within Judaism, certainly if we're talking about Judaism and Islam, that we believe in the same God. And this belief, if it's in our hearts, will bring us together. But we need partners also of our Muslim brothers who, reading their holy sources, reach the same conclusion that the God that we believe, as far as they're concerned, is the same God that they serve and believe. Dr. Omer Salem's doctorate at the Al-Azhar University in Cairo, which is the most prestigious university of Islam, it's more than 1,000 years old, I believe.
Yes.
The topic of his doctorate was the status of Jews in the Quran, and demonstrating that the simple understanding of the Quran is that the Jewish people, the people of the Katav,
yes,
the people of the book, these are the Jewish people of today, and this is an acknowledgement of the Jewish people and their love and serve of God. And these are our partners who could bring us together, which can make the source of the conflict be the source of the connection. Last year, after we finished the lecture, I said to Dr. Omar that we have to go together to pray the Marat HaMachpelah. So we went together. And last time, I tell the story last time, I'll make it very short, that well, forget about it. But anyway, last time my wife was there, she joined in with the muazzin. So I said this time, I asked Omer to join in our tefillah. So we said Pirkei Tilim together at the grave of our father Avraham, who, and as we have a lot in common. We both have 7 children. So I just told him that at a Jewish wedding we have 7 blessings. So I always tell everyone that myself and my wife, we are every day a chatan and kala because we have 7 blessings. So I told him that, I don't know what they do at Muslim weddings, but I'm sure he has 7 blessings every day also. But we know that every father, the most they want is that their kids to get along with each other. So looking at Avraham as Av Hamon Goyim, father of many nations. And we know in the Medrash on the Akedat Yitzchak, when God turns to Avram and says, take the son you love, and Avram says, I love both of my sons. I love Yitzchak and I love Yishmael. So both our father Avraham and both our father Avinu Shebashamayim, God in heaven, we know, as every father knows, what they want most is that their children to live together in love and peace. So we're grateful to have our partners here. And one thing that I've learned, and with this I'll conclude, is that recently I was at a school in the town of Kfar Rama, near Carmiel. There's 700 Arab school with 700 children. And I spoke to the children there. And when I spoke to them about the possibilities of peace and coexistence, I quoted Rav Benny, because Rav Benny, as a historian, has taught us that history is never the story of the masses. History, things change, is because of the individuals. Whether it was the Zionist movement, whether the story of the Jewish people, movements for the good and movements for the bad. It always gets back to a small group of people that are committed. And those small group could go and change the world. So at the school in Ramah with the 700 Arab students, I told them, there's 700 of you over here. If you decide, be those few, be the change, as Gandhi says, be the change you want to see in the world, I said, if the 700 of you get together, you could really change Israeli society. And then I asked them, I said, you know, the whole world talks about what happens in Israel. Why do you think that's true? So the Arab student said, that's because everybody knows it all started here. And if it all started here, they know that somehow things happen here have an implication for all of humanity. So in the same way, to change things here, the whole world is in conflict. It's not just the Middle East. It's not just what's happening in Israel. But the eyes of the world are here. If things could get straightened out over here, if we could find connection here, this will impact on the whole world. And without further ado, I will introduce my dear friend and brother, Dr. Omer Salem. And afterwards, especially for those who are challenged by English, we will hear from our friends from Segev Shalom in Hebrew, which will be very refreshing for all those that are challenged by understanding English. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for this introduction. And I am pleased to be here, and I would like to actually start by start this by invoking a prayer in Arabic, in the Arabic language. It's a prayer that is recited 17 times by Muslims every day. And then I also invoke a prayer for the blessing of this gathering. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawm ad-Din. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. I would like to make a prayer that you will say Amen to, and somebody will translate for you that prayer later on, but it's a beautiful prayer for what we're doing. اللهم إنا نسألك إخلاصا في الأعمال ونسألك صدقا في الأقوال ونسألك يقينا في الاتكال ونسألك حلاوة في الإيمان ونسألك عافية في الأبدان ونسألك تقوى في القلوب ونسألك سلامة في الصدور اللهم اجعلنا ممن توكل عليك فكفيته واستهداك فهديته واستنصرك فنصرته واسترحمك فرحمته وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وجميع رسل الله صلى الله وسلم عليه.
آمين.
آمين.
Okay, maybe in a few words, give the gist of what.
Yeah, what I have mentioned in this dua, the first part was the prayer that is repeated 17 times in the prescribed 5 daily prayers for the Muslim people. There is 1.5 billion Muslims worldwide, and they say the same prayers all over the world. And it is in the name of God, most merciful, most compassionate, most merciful, most compassionate. Praise be to God, the King of the world, King Ha'olam, as we say in Hebrew. And then there is a request from, we say that you alone do we worship, and you alone do we seek guidance. O God, you alone we worship, and you alone we seek guidance. Guide us to the straight path, the straight of those who have earned your blessings, and not the straight of those who have earned your wrath, or the straight of those who have gone astray. So this is actually the daily prayer. The second part of what I have actually mentioned here today is a famous verse from chapter 2 of the Quran. It is Surah Baqarah, it's called. And the ayah that I recited is a famous ayah. It's called Ayatul Kursi, which is the verse of the throne. And it praises God and attribute all knowledge to God, and says that no one is permitted to do anything or to have anything except with the permission of God. And then it just ends by praising God and asking for mercy from God. The last part, which was prayers, where you said Ameen to, I said, "Oh Allah, give us sincerity in our work. Oh God, give us truth in our talks. Oh God, give us certitude in our trust in you. Oh God, give us sweetness in our faith. And oh God, give us strength in our bodies so we can worship you. Oh God, give us fear of you in our heart. Give us your fear in our heart. And then, oh God, we ask you that you would make us among those who, when they trust in you, you are enough. You are enough. They don't need to trust in anybody else. If they trust in you, they don't need to trust anybody else. And make us among those who, when they ask for guidance, you guide them. And make us among those who, when they ask for your help, you help them. And make us among those who, when they ask for your mercy, have mercy on them. You see, in Islam, like it is in Judaism, we worship God, the creator of heaven and earth, the sun that rises every morning and gives light and heat to the entire humanity. There is no, God does not send us a bill each month for that sun that comes out. Imagine if that sunlight was not for free and we had to work hard for the sun to come out. The same way with the moon that comes out and allow us to know day from night, allow us to count the days of the month. So I was speaking a little bit about the greatness of God, Hashem, the greatness of Adonai, the greatness of Elohim, Yahweh, Allah. God created us all, created all of humanity. He gave us all our faculties. But before God created us, before God created man, He's created this entire universe. This entire universe we live in, He's created the sun, the moon, the rivers, the trees, the animals, everything that was created to serve man. That was the purpose of that entire creation. And then God created man to serve God. That's what it is. That's the bottom line. If we understand that, we come closer. And something else that will also bring us closer together here. We have to realize something. None of us in this room or outside this room chose their parents. Has any of you chosen his parents? Have any of you? No. I didn't know that my mom would be or my dad. I didn't choose them. I also did not, for the most part, most of us, did not even choose their skin color, or their names, or their religion for that matter. Most of us inherited the religion of our parents. Isn't that true? For the most part, that's the case. And yet, what tends to happen, and also one more thing, we didn't even inherit our nationality, the flag that we salute. We didn't inherit. We didn't choose that. We didn't choose that. So we didn't choose our nationality, our religion, our names, or our parents. These were all given. And then guess what happens? We spend all our life defending something we did not choose. We spent all our life defending something we did not choose. Okay? So we have to, just like we didn't choose that, other people also didn't choose that. Thank you. They didn't choose their skin color. They didn't choose their names. They didn't choose their parents. So in order for this humanity to exist in peace, we have to appreciate each other as humans first. Before there were a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian or Buddhist or any tradition there is, we were all humans. After all, we're all humans. And if we reflect on that, a lot of the challenges that we're facing will be less of a challenge to us. Less of a challenge. Because we will begin to appreciate the other people. And we will begin to find excuses for their action or for their inaction. Okay? So, having made that introduction about God and about humanity, I'd like to talk a little bit about the situation we find ourselves in here in this part of the world, which as someone who doesn't live in the Holy Land, in Palestine, Israel, and I just look and reflect on what is going on here, and I can't help it by maybe pull my hair and say, why we can't get along? Why can't we get along as human beings? Why are we always having to fight each other? And to that extent, I have put together my thoughts in a book. And because there is so much peace that could have been had that is missing, I call the book The Missing Piece. And the missing piece shows that the piece is already there, but we are not connected with it. And peace can and should be part of our frame of mind, part of our thinking. And as we exert effort in making peace possible, just like we exert effort in making conflict possible, peace will reign, peace will take place. The problem we're facing in the world today, and in this region in particular, as was mentioned here by Rabbi Nagin, everybody's eyes on this land and on what happens here. And what happened here tends to repel and have its precaution on many parts of the world. Many of the acts that are done in violent extremist acts are done, and then they point to what happened here in the Holy Land. So it's really important that we find a way to have peace here, because peace here means peace in so many places in the world. It's amazing. Like Rabbi Nagin said, everything started here. Actually, I would differ with him slightly with that and say everything started with Egypt before you guys came here. Before you everything, all the events, all the
it was too difficult.
Yeah. Yes, the excitement started there, and then got into Sinai. I mean, Sinai was also part of the action. You know, the tabernacle was not here; it was in Sinai, right? And much of the history was there too, before it got here and so forth. So it is definitely my hope, and it's a hope of Rabbi Nagin and everyone who hear us and all the conferences we've been to, that we arrive at the formula for making peace possible. And it can only happen, when we openly discuss the elephant in the room. What's the elephant in the room? Religion. We're not going to have peace here in this land until the religion is discussed openly and honestly, and people accept each other and accept the religion of the other side. And with that, I'm sure the creator of heaven and earth, who created Muslims and Jews and Christians and everybody else didn't have conflict as the goal of the creation, but he had peace as the goal of the creation. That's why that we in Judaism we say that that the Talmud is all about making peace with the world.
Tamidei Chachamim marbim shalom b'olam. The scholars increase peace in the world.
Exactly. So that's what it is. And also we say that Islam has the same word and the same root as peace. And we can now hear the muazzin from this window saying, come to pray. Hayya ala al-falah. Come to success. And he's calling Allahu Akbar, you know. so unfortunately, that verse has been taken and misused and abused by people who commit violence in the name of that verse. When it should be Allahu Akbar means I invite you to pray, not I'm about to blow up myself and I say Allahu Akbar. So, the religion has many. We, like Rabbi Nagin said, and before him Rabbi Kalmanson mentioned, and we're very honored to have him today in Hebrew about the importance of coming together to search for peace, and I as a scholar of the Quran and of the Tanakh, because I studied the Tanakh, and that's what made me gain appreciation for you. After I studied a little bit of Hebrew and studied the Tanakh, I said, wow, this is precious. I want people who believe in this to be my neighbors. That's great. If they believe in this, they follow this. This is wonderful. But you see, not many Muslims have done that. And let me tell you something. The reason they have not done that, the reason they don't read your book, and the reason they have not making an effort to learn even your language, is because there is so much, let us say, lie is a big word, but let's just say distorted information out there that you are all atheists, okay? That you are all kafir, that you don't believe in anything, that all you worry about is money. All these stereotypes, unfortunately, are out there, and we have to deal with them. And the Quran tells otherwise. The Quran actually has a very favorable view of God-fearing Jews. If you're a God-fearing Jew, I encourage you, and actually even if you're an atheist, read the Quran. It doesn't matter. Whether you're an atheist or a God-fearing Jew, as a matter of fact, I'm leaving my business card here with my email. Definitely email me, and I'll send you a copy of the Quran in Hebrew. So you can read it in Hebrew or in English or in Arabic, whatever you like. But why am I encouraging you to do this? I'm encouraging you to do this because it's a path to peace. It's a path to peace with your neighbor. Most of your neighbors around here, they don't read this. They don't read this book. Okay? Very few do. But what the book that is read mostly, and not only in this land, but in in all the surrounding countries practically, is this book. Now, why am I emphasizing this book? Because I want to hold Muslims to what's in here. I want to hold Muslims to the truth that's in here that allows them to live in peace with their Jewish neighbor. I want the Jewish neighbor to live in peace with the Muslim. And for that to take place, there's got to be a group of Jews who read this, not with the intention of finding faults and finding contradictions and all that. No, but with the intention of finding pearls of wisdom. Just like I did when I read this book. I didn't read it with the intention of finding contradictions or faults or anything like that. I read this book with the intention of finding pearls of wisdom, and there are so many of them here. So many of them here. One of the main points that I found in the Tanakh, and I found its parallel in the Quran, talks about this entire conflict. You know what it says? In the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 7, it says, when man's way are pleasing to God, even his enemy will become his friend. When man's way are pleasing to God, when a human's way pleasing to God, even his enemy will become his friend. This is mirrored in the Quran in chapter number 41, verse number 34. It says, وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ ادْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. Repel evil was good. If someone is not kind to you, try to repel that with kindness. That will change the heart of that person and they will become your best friend. Okay? It goes both ways. If we practice it, whether we practice it based on the book of Proverbs in the Hebrew Bible, or we practice it based on Surah As-Saffat in the Quran, we get to the same conclusion. We become best friends. Okay? We have outside powers.
Yeah. So quotes, I have both the Quran in Hebrew and English in my house. So one of my favorite Mishnayot,
Yes.
very well known about if you save, God created one person in the beginning, because if you save one person, you save the world. But if you kill a person, you've destroyed the world. And they learned that from the story of Cain and Hevel.
Yes.
That same teaching appears in the Quran.
Absolutely.
And there's some teachings that don't appear in the Torah that many would find surprising. For example, in the story about Moshe, after Moshe kills the Egyptian, right? And in the Quran, it said that Moshe did not intend to kill him. He wanted to stop the Egyptian from hitting the Jew,
Yes.
but he didn't want to kill him, and he feels that he did a terrible sin for using unnecessary force.
Yes.
And Allah is Al-Rahman Al-Rahim,
Yes.
because he forgives Moshe for using unnecessary force.
Yes.
And then, of course, everybody is thinking of the next question. If in the Quran we see there's an opposition to violence, and how we look at, you open the news, and I'm sure that Dr. Omer Salem will explain how if a book that there's every surah begins with Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim,
Yes.
God the Merciful, that talks about not overdoing it in war, how this has led to the violence we see,
Yes.
and how a book that talks so favorably about the children of Israel is somehow there are negative things about Judaism and Islam, and this is what we're going to hear today.
Actually, that a good transition into the question and answer period, where Rabbi Nagin now has given me the first question as to text in our Holy Quran, and why is there so much violence in the name of Allah, in the name of Islam? Why do people, instead of when they hear Allahu Akbar, they don't run to the mosque and pray? They are taking that verse or that name and committing violence and saying Allahu Akbar. The one thing that we should all know, that Islam is not interpreted uniformly. It's a uniform religion in that it has one book. It's the same book for all Muslims. They don't believe in a secondary book. They believe in this book. However, just like we have in Judaism 4 different schools of thoughts, at least in America we have that. We have the Reformed, we have the Reconstructionists, we have the Conservative, and we have the Orthodox. And each one of those traditions looks at the same Bible in a certain way. They don't all look at it the same way.
Are you Orthodox, Reform?
Am I?
Yes.
Okay, let me share with you what the 5 schools of thought in Islam is today. There is the secular Muslim, there is also the moderate Muslim, and then there is the traditionalist Muslim, and then there is the fundamentalist Muslim, and then there is the Salafi jihadi Muslim. Okay, those 5 exist. Those 5 thoughts and reflections on the book.
Where are you?
I am a traditionalist. Traditionalist. So I am between the fundamentalist on one hand and the moderate or secular on the other hand. A traditionalist Muslim view sees the world, as the Quran correctly states, as far as the relation between Islam and Judaism, for example, because that's the important piece of this topic. In Surah number 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 62, it says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئِينَ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Let me translate what this ayah says. Those who believe, those who say we are Jews, those who say we are Christians, and those who say we are Sabi'ah or no-hides, any of those people who fear God, who fears God, and think that they're going to be accountable for their actions, and think that good deeds are a path to become near God, kiruf, being close to God. People who think along those terms, they will be having the reward by God, and they have nothing to fear. That's what this verse says. Nothing to fear. So it actually includes Jews and Muslims in the same verse. That's a verse that has both traditions in the same verse. Now, here is the challenge that...
You also mentioned the passage talks about that if God wanted, he could have made everybody the same.
Yes, okay, let me okay, Rabbi Negan is reminding me of another verse that's also important. Let me share that verse with you. And that's why I encourage you all to read the Quran, because it's in your favor, for heaven's sakes. It's in your favor. You are praised so much in the Quran, you wouldn't believe it. So I definitely encourage you to read. I'm talking about the God-fearing Jews, okay? The atheist Jews are not favored in the Quran. Let me just be honest, okay? So, but the God-fearing Jews are favored in the Quran. وَفَضَّلْنَاكُمْ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ وَلَقَدْ اخْتَرْنَاهُمْ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ. It says that you're the chosen people. I mean, the Quran says that you're you don't have to go to the Tanakh or the Torah to tell you that. The Quran says that in black and white. You are the chosen people. But let's stop here for this chosenness, because I want to mention something, because sometimes that chosenness concept tends to be misused and abused. Let me tell you how it gets misused. If I am Jewish and I'm indoctrinated in people telling me, oh, you're chosen, you're better than everybody else, everyone else is like they're animals. If I got that kind of thing in me, it might tend to color my reaction or my view on the world. But here's how it would be best for you to think whenever the term chosen is used. It is best for you to think about a verse in the Tanakh, in the book of Amos, chapter number 3, verse number 1 and 2. It says that you have been chosen to account for your own inequities. So you've been chosen, that's right. But you should be chosen to account for your own iniquities. And in fact, I will have Rabbi Negan read it here. Please, read it in Hebrew for the...
Okay.
And,
okay.
okay. Yeah.
שמעו את הדבר הזה אשר דיבר השם עליכם בני ישראל, על כל המשפחה אשר העליתי מארץ מצרים לאמור, רק אתכם ידעתי מכל משפחות האדמה, על כן אפקוד עליכם את כל עוונותיכם.
Right, Rabbi? Isn't that amazing? Did you guys hear that? Now you understand? So whenever somebody talks about chosenness, remind him of this. Remind him what the Rabbi just read. Okay? Very, very important. Very important. Why? Because we want to help each other bring the hearts closer. We want to help each other bring the hearts closer. And if you think of the concept of chosenness in the terms that Rabbi read in the Tanakh, things will get much better in this land and in many, many other places of the world. Then also, I also want to mention something else that is prevalent, unfortunately, among some Jews, whether here or elsewhere, but primarily here in the land, and that is something that was uttered by an Israeli politician, where he said, "You know what? Those Palestinians are animals." Okay, so he said it. I won't name the person, and I want to just mention that the Tanakh encouraged all of us to think of others not on those dark terms, but to think of them as also having the support and the help of Hashem, of God. And here's a verse that says that. Could you?
Okay. Yisrael batach b'Hashem, Ezra miganamhu. Beit Aaron bitchu b'Hashem, Ezra miganamhu. And Yirei Hashem bitchu b'Hashem, Ezra miganamhu. And I'll mention the scholar, David Flusser, very great scholar, argues that Yirei Hashem is referring to all, including all of humanity.
Yes.
Not beyond Yisrael and Beit Aaron. And let me add, tonight, Dr. Salam is going to be meet Rav Yoel Schwartz, the founder of the Nachal Haredi, who's very into the mitzvot of Bnei Noach. And I once organized a Skype meeting between Dr. Salam and Rav Yoel Schwartz. And Rav Yoel, when the first thing he said that in Tehillim, David HaMelech says, all fears of God are my friends. Excellent. So he said, let us say, I am a God-fearer, you are a God-fearer. We don't need the other labels.
Exactly.
And then I'll add something he didn't tell you. Then he said, I have to speak to Rav Re'im, because in the Jewish people, within the Jewish people, we have the same problem. It's not only Jews and non-Jews, it's within the Jews, you're this type of Jew or that type of Jew. Yes. So Rav Yoel Schwartz says he wants to have a kenes of Charedim and Dati Lumi and everybody together to say, let's try to let less the external labels and more the essence.
Thank you. And that's a very good point to build on. Because instead of dividing the world of Muslims and non-Muslims, or Jews and non-Jews, here's how you should really think about the world. Think about the world if you want to have peace, think about those terms. Like what Rabbi Negan just said. God-fearing people and people who don't fear God. That's it. That's the split. Along those lines, think that if there's somebody who fears God in any tradition, like I respect you for respecting your own book. That's primarily why I'm here. If you didn't respect this book, you won't find me here. I won't be in this place. I'll be somewhere else. Okay. So my respect for you is because you respect your holy book. And I want your respect for me and for other Muslims in general for the respecting their book. If a Muslim respects the Quran, you should respect them. Because respecting them adds to your good demeanor and adds to you advancing the cause of peace in the world. Now,
so why the Quran has so bad public relations now?
Yes, I will explain that. Yes, absolutely, and you have every right to say that. But let me go back to the verse that Rabbi Negan asked me to say, and then I'll come back to your question. The verse that Rabbi Negan asked me to share with you today is a verse in chapter 5, verse number 48. And that verse says, to each of you, first of all, the chapter was talking about Muslim, Christians, and Jewish, and Muslims and other traditions. And it says, to each of you, God has given a path and a way to God. If God has willed it, He would have made you all one nation. But His plan is to have you as different nations so you can compete. Compete in what? In fighting and killing each other? No. Compete in righteousness. That's what the Quran says in that chapter. لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شَرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً وَلَكِنْ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ فِي مَا أَتَاكُمْ فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. Here is my answer to Rabbi Kimmelson question about why the Quran is getting so much bad press out there. Okay. The first thing I'd really like to say to that is that Muslim people are like any other people. They have the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay. They have the person who seeks peace and the person who seeks to do something else. Okay, destroy. But for the most part, if you hold them to the text in the Quran, by you knowing what's in the Quran, they will submit to that because they respect their text. Here's what's been happening in the world today. The wrath of Muslims around the world and what you hear in the news and so forth is not so much directed towards Jews as much as it is directed towards Christianity. And let me be honest, this is a fact of life that in the world that we live in today. There's a brewing conflict now between Islam and Christianity. I wish that the kind of work we're doing today was done 10 years ago. We would have been able to do something more significant. And I hope to God that I'm wrong. We're not going to have a war around religious lines. But that seems to be where the world is headed. It is a religious war is brewing now in the background. Okay? Where Muslims are sticking to their guns and saying, no. We're going to take from this book the verses that talk about jihad and talk about war and talk about everybody else is a non-believer. And we're going to discount and render the verses that talk about acceptance of the other as verses that have been abrogated. Abrogation is a terminology that is used, and it was used for many years by the church, by the way, where they said that the New Testament abrogated, canceled the Old Testament. Okay, the church was saying for 2,000 years we are New Israel. Okay, the old Israel is gone. There's no more.
Israel.
Huh?
Verus Israel.
Virus.
In Latin.
In Latin, against Israel.
Oh, Virus Israel. Yeah. So that was being taught for many years, and resulted in so much atrocities against the Jewish people. Examples of those are the Crusades that came to this land, the Inquisition, the pogroms in Russia, culminating with the Holocaust in Germany. So all of that took place. Now, unfortunately, what is happening is that somebody out there is fanning the flame of having a conflict along religious lines, where Christians and Jews would be on one side and Muslims on the other side. I don't know what they're gaining by that, but apparently every small event that takes place gets so much publicity to color, like, okay, a small, like a couple makes a suicide or makes a shooting in California, for example, like it happened last month, and then an entire the Muslim tradition is held captive and responsible for this couple for doing what they did, and then there's so much bad press out there about a religion that's embraced by 1.5 billion people. So what, are you going to get rid of 1.5 billion people because of the action of a couple that was radicalized? You won't be able to, and you can't, and it's just not going to happen, because they're not going to stand and take the bunch. And for Muslims, what they do is they get radicalized when they feel there is so much injustice that is done to them. They feel they are oppressed so much. And thanks to the empire, America, where I come from, they had 2 wars against Muslims. One in Iraq, one in Afghanistan. Now, obviously, they weren't really going into wars against Muslims. They didn't intend to do that. But they were perceived by other people that they are going to war against Muslims. And hence, radical groups like ISIS came out. Of course, we have Taliban. After the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan, they're back in place there. And these people are dangerous because they are taking and cherry-picking text from the Quran that demonize the other. That's it. That's what they're doing.
On the Bible, there's
Yeah.
William Blake has a famous line: "We both read Bible day and night. You read black and I read white." Reflecting that two people read the same
Yeah.
book.
Exactly.
Right.
So what causes people to read black or white is their own personal experience. And then if they feel that there's, like for example in Iraq, you all heard of the prison there, Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq. There were atrocities committed in that prison. Also Guantanamo. Horror stories come out of that prison. When those horror stories are brought out, Muslim youth is enraged when they see that. They say, these people did this to us. These people did, I mean, for example, they say, oh, they burned the Quran. Oh, they cursed your prophet. Oh, they did this to the Muslim. And then they get radicalized. And then what cements the radicalization is drone attacks. Drone attacks kill so many more civilians than they kill combatants. And then what happened is, those civilians who had nothing to do with the conflict gradually become radicalized.
So move on to the question and answers.
Yeah, okay, so let's see here. We're going to have... and I really prefer that people take the piece of paper and write the questions down if they can, because I can benefit from those in English. But I'll take the first question while somebody else is writing. Yeah, please go ahead.
There are two events in history which makes Israeli Jews suspicious about Islam,
Yes.
which is the agreement of Hudaybah with the Arab Quraysh,
Yes.
which mentioned in the Johannesburg speech of Yasser Arafat.
Yes.
The question is if it's not a model which you are committed to in your relations with non-Muslims, even Ahl al-Kitab,
Yes.
even monotheistic beliefs.
So, what's the question? Can you paraphrase this question?
The question is if there is not a commitment of Muslims to make agreements with
Yes.
non-Muslims, and then
Yeah. Then what should we do? Get me the microphone.
Okay.
I'd like to speak to that. Okay, so
הסכם
הסכם חודייבה שמוחמד יצא למלחמה נגד הכופרים, אז כדי להקל עליו את הלחץ הוא חתם על הסכם מבני השבט שלו, קורייש, הסכם אי לוחמה, וכאשר הוא התפנה מהמלחמה נגד שבטים אחרים הוא בעצם תקף את הקורייש והכריע אותם. ערפאת בנאום יוהנסבורג ב-1994 השווה את הסכמי אוסלו להסכם חודייבה.
okay, here is what I'm glad you brought the context of Mr. Yasser Arafat and Oslo agreement and how he related that to Sulh al-Hudaybiyah. So Yasser Arafat was speaking and referring to an event in history that took place 1400 years ago between Prophet Muhammad and the newly found Islamic nation in Medina and the warring tribes who were opposing him and actually wanted to destroy his newly found nation. The way we study Sulh al-Hudaybiyah may or may not be the same way you studied it. And let me share with you what we study about Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, or the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. This is, as you have stated correctly, is an agreement, a sulh, between Muslimin and Kuffar, those who believed the message that was brought by Prophet Muhammad and those who disbelieved in it. And history tells us that or the way it's taught to us is that, and our information, by the way, comes from Ibn Hisham, who wrote down the events of that treaty. It tells us that Prophet Muhammad told the people who were opposing him, okay, I will not go to Mecca, because he was on his way to come to Mecca. And they stopped him and said, no, go back. And let's have a peace treaty first before you can come to Mecca. And during that time, he agreed to the terms of that treaty. And the terms of that treaty were really harsh on the Muslims, more than it was harsh on the non-Muslims. For example, couple of the what they agreed to in that treaty, a couple of the covenants there, is that if any Muslim decided to reject Muhammad, peace be upon him, and go back to Quraysh, who was his enemy at the time, that Muhammad would let him go, would not oppose him. And any person from Quraysh who wanted to become a Muslim and follow Muhammad, he cannot do that. And the Muslims during that time submitted and agreed to that. They agreed that if any person wanted to embrace Islam, they tell them, no, stay. You can't be with us now. And anyone from the Muslim camp who wanted to defect the Muslim camp and leave to go to Quraysh, they can do that. Historian has it that when this agreement was in place, and after that agreement took place, without any warring now, more people in the tribes of Arabia, in the surrounding tribes, embraced the religion of Muhammad than in any other time since he began his da'wah or proselytization. And it was all done peacefully. So people came into Islam peacefully after that agreement. Fast forward to now, to this conflict here. What I put in my book is that if we Muslims would allow Jews the full ability to practice their faith as best as they know how, and not get into conflict with them, many people will see Islam in a totally different light. Many people will see Islam truly as a peaceful religion, because after all, God said in the Quran there is no coercion in religion. Those who want to believe can believe. Those who don't want to believe, they don't have to believe. لا إكراه في الدين. That's the Arabic word in the Quran about there is no coercion in religion. So in fact, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, even though it was very harsh on the Muslims, more people embraced Islam as part of that treaty than they didn't. And the thing is, at the end of the day, on the Day of Judgment, the measuring stick is not going to be whether you say you are Muslim, or you say you are Jewish, or you say you are Christian. The main measuring stick is, did you fear God? Did you have the fear of God in your heart? Did you treat other people with kindness? Did you help the sick? Did you help the poor? Did you help the destitute? Those are the measuring sticks, and they're mentioned in all our books. So if we just think about that, reflect that, we will all be in much better shape. Please, the next question.
So we have
yeah.
I think we'll have so many questions. I think we wanted to have a prayer at the end. So at 3:20 we'll have the short prayer before mincha. Okay, so
go
since
ahead.
we have a limited amount of time and a lot of questions, I'm going to try to combine some of the questions.
Yeah.
I think we might have to shorter and even though the answers are wonderful. So let me combine two questions here. One question. Do you think moderate Islam has a realistic chance of overcoming radical Islam, whether in the Arab world in general or in Palestinian society in particular? And I'd like to connect this to another question. What do you think is the reason that Islamic religion has so many more violent extremist militants than other religions of the world? Why is that we don't hear as much about Christian, Jewish, Buddhist terror groups in the news, but rather it's Islamic terror groups that dominate the news?
Okay. So let me answer those questions before we go to the next.
Right.
The first part of the question was...
Is there hope for the moderate Islam to overcome?
Is there a hope for moderate Islam to overcome violent extremism? Well, moderate Islam needs to ground their moderation in our holy text. Sometimes moderate Islam borrows from secular beliefs, shall we say. And when they do that, they don't have a chance to counter those extremist or fundamentalist Muslims. So the first advice would be to moderate Islam, and that's something I promote myself, is that they have to have a platform to speak, and the platform for moderate Islam to speak is minuscule. I don't know of any group that calls itself moderate Muslims. I take that back. There was a group that did that in Washington, D.C. Last week or 2 weeks ago, after the incident that took place in San Bernardino County in America. There came moderate Muslims together, and they put together an initiative. I listened to that initiative as a traditionalist Muslim, and I said, this is good for a secular environment, but it's not going to cut it with those fundamentalist Muslims. I know those moderate Muslims, they meant well, but for example, the ladies they brought up did not dress modestly. Okay, I'm just being honest with you. And fundamentalist Muslims, they tend to look at that as an insult. If a lady is speaking, coming out on camera and speaking in the name of Islam, and she does not even dress modestly, does not cover her hair, for example, they discount that. So I think that it would behoove moderate Islam to ground their moderate views in what would be acceptable and not antagonistic to fundamentalist Muslims. That's one point. The other point is that fundamentalists point out to the many atrocities that have befell the Muslim nation. They point to the war in Afghanistan, in Iraq, the war that's happening in Syria today. Wars in many places where they say, look, the Muslims here are being killed. The blood is so cheap. Nobody cares about them. Nobody's caring about, the Syrian people. It's been going on for 4 years now. The U.S. doesn't want to intervene and take sides and, for example, get the ruler of Syria out so that the country gets to function and so forth. The U.S. doesn't want. Russia is on the opposite side. They say, no, we want the ruler of Syria to be in place, and that prolonged the fight. So Muslims are saying, look at what's happening here. They really don't care about us, and that's why they are going out and committing these acts. And frankly, radical or let's just say fundamentalists and Salafi jihadi groups are killing more Muslims than they are killing non-Muslims. Okay, when you really think about it, that's exactly what's happening.
Why is it so popular to kill in your own nation?
Well, they kill Muslims because they call them non-Muslims. Even though they're Muslims, they call them murtad, which in English would be the word skips my mind now. but it is someone who repelled the religion. Heretic who mu'im, or munafiq, who is a hypocrite, claims he's a Muslim but he's not really a Muslim, and then there's a lot of killing in that as well, for that reason as well. So that's what's happening there. The other question was
why is it that seems to be more radicalism in the name of religion in Islam than other religions now?
Because it is perceived by many Muslim scholars who theorize for the extremists that Islam is under attack for the religion. The religion is under attack, and that there is a conspiracy, a worldwide conspiracy to abolish Islam. There's a worldwide conspiracy to kill all Muslims. That's what they somehow got into their mind, that that's the case. And then they point out to events in many Muslim countries, whether what happened in Bosnia, in Chechnya, in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Syria. So that's what they use as the fuel to say, hey, we should really go out and do something about this. And then, like I said, they cherry pick verses from the Quran to support their position. Okay, someone like me speaking before you here is at risk by those jihadi groups to say, oh, Omar, why are you talking to the Jews? Why are you and then, you can commit acts of violence against me, against my family. This is all, but I would rather work for peace and be harmed than to work for war and be harmed.
Okay, so maybe we'll do one more question, and then
Yes.
afterwards, I'll read all the other questions without answering them, so at least people should be aware what questions were asked. One very interesting question is that someone wrote, their impression is that the written Torah, both of the Quran and of the Bible, is relatively more moderate to other. Let's see if I can find it again.
That's it.
What?
I saw it.
This one?
This one.
Oh, got it. Okay. I wonder who wrote that. Okay. While it may be true that both the Quran and Bible promote interfaith peace, both religions add to the respective adhere to their respective oral traditions that less promote peaceful cooperation, and even sometimes the opposite. And I recall last year you mentioned that most of the anti-Jewish statements in Islam appear not in the Torah but in the Hadith.
Yes.
And I think the same way is true within Judaism.
Yes.
That in the Torah Shel Peh there are more negative statements per se about non-Jews than would appear in the Bible itself.
Absolutely. Because here's really what happens, and it's the same way. It's true for Judaism. It's true for Islam, as Rabbi Negan put it. People who read the Quran, for example, and then they memorize it. They memorize all 600 pages, and then they go to read what's called the Hadith. Now, the Hadith corpus, there is so many Hadith that have been proven to be weak, and the Prophet didn't actually say them. And what he said was a small amount of Hadith, but they attribute to him much larger corpus of Hadith. And within those Hadith, they put text that is demeaning to others. And then they take the Hadith and say, wait a second, the Hadith can trump the Quran. The Hadith can have more power than the Quran. And then they use that to demonize the other. Okay? Unfortunately, it's a problem. It also happened within Judaism. We know that it happened in Talmudic writing. For example, about, there was some certain writings about, Jesus Christ as the devil, for example, or a bastard, or whatever has been written there. Those things were written to reject someone who believes in a certain way and only accept rabbinical Judaism that believes in a certain way. And to give exclusion, to give exclusive exclusiveness to people who think in a certain way over accepting the other, if you will. So that, like it exists in Judaism, it also exists in our religion. And the solution to that is for both traditions to go to the pure text and the original text. When I meet a Jew, I'm very anxious to apply a concept called kiruv. You know, bring him closer to the Torah, bring him closer to... If he's not attending synagogue, I encourage him to attend the synagogue. And then, you know, I encourage him to listen to what the rabbi said, encourage him to read his book. And I want him to do the same thing with me. I want the Jew to help me become a better student of my own book. Because if I become a better student of the Quran and pay less attention to certain writings that conflict with the Quran, we will all have peace.
Okay, so I'll read the last of the questions here without answering them. But I'm driving after this to a meeting in Beit Jala on the topic of Har HaBayit and Al-Aqsa. So I'll get good answers from Dr. Salem on the way there. So afterwards you can come to me and I'll try to remember the answers. The unanswered questions are that was said that Islam and Judaism both believe that mitzvot bring you closer to God, but Jews and Islam believe in different good deeds. Okay, so another was a question, how do you recommend to learn the Quran? With the plain translation, with a commentary in order by topic. Okay, I'll try to get answers to this on our way to Beit Jala. Asking what would the status of Jewish citizens be in a Islamic republic?
Yes.
To hear more about the four types of belief in Islam, and the different ways of understanding the Quran. And someone wrote both in Arabic and then wrote in English and this I will give a very short answer to. The real elephant in the room is that the Jews don't acknowledge the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And here I would say that with Christianity we have a much more complex issue, because Judaism does not accept the divinity of Jesus. When we're dealing with Muhammad the word Navi is a very broad word. In terms, the Rambam writes about how Muhammad brings the world closer to accept the oneness of God. There is one of the Rishonim, I forgot his name, I'm sure Devir Vashevsky. Navi, right, that's what I'm thinking of. Said that he's a Navi for
his people.
For his people.
Yes.
And Rav Kook, recently in his book, L'Nevuchei Ador, says that there's no reason to think that Nevuah, prophecy, is only to the Jewish people. He brings sources of prophecy to many. And in general, in his new book, Rav Kook's, that he wrote 100 years ago, talks about the will of God as having different religions and each one serving their religion. And in that context, he talks about the founders of different religion as being people, moral people. And then he says that there's nothing in Judaism to deny that other people could have prophecy. So I think this elephant can be made into a mouse. And
actually, I want to comment on this elephant,
sure,
because I want to comfort you regarding this elephant. There is a conflation out there that is causing Jews to reject Muhammad. Okay, as long as you have that understanding, it's okay for you to reject Prophet Muhammad. But here's the correct understanding, so you can accept Prophet Muhammad and still practice your faith. There were Jews during the time of Prophet Muhammad. There were Jews who lived in the Abbasid monarchy, in the Umayyad monarchy. There were Jews who lived in Andalusia, in Spain. And they got along very well with those Muslims. Didn't these Muslims know that these Jews don't believe in Muhammad? What does it mean to believe in Muhammad? Peace be upon him. What it means is to acknowledge that he is a prophet for his people. God does not want you to do more than that. Just believe that Prophet Muhammad is a prophet for his own people. The Quran say that. The Quran say that you are a prophet for your people, and there are other prophets that I have sent for other people. So if God is saying that, we can apply that. Now here's where the problem arises. The problem arises because some of the ulama, and that's a name for Muslim scholars, who came and wrote certain text, secondary texts, like the Gemara, for example. And in it, they say, oh, okay, it is not enough for you to say that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a prophet for his people. That's not enough. What you need to do once you acknowledge that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a prophet, is to reject your own tradition and follow his tradition. You see what I'm saying? Meaning that, oh, you now have to fast in Ramadan. You now have to pray 5 times to Mecca and ignore Jerusalem. The Quran doesn't say that. The Quran say that you have a destination of prayer to Jerusalem, Muslim people have a destination of prayer to Mecca. And in God's vast universe, there is room for everyone. There is room for everyone under the sun. And in fact, they want you to violate the Sabbath. Reject the Sabbath. You don't need the Sabbath, according to that understanding, narrow understanding. When the Quran tells you to uphold the Sabbath, وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا فِي السَّبْتِ, is a verse in the Quran that asks you as a Jew to uphold the Sabbath. And you are cursed if you don't uphold the Sabbath. The Quran says you are cursed if you don't uphold the Sabbath. Listen to this. So it's not only your rabbis saying that in a nice mellow way, but the Quran says it in a very strong way. As a matter of fact, the Torah says those who don't uphold the Sabbath, they get killed. The Torah says you get killed if you don't uphold the Sabbath. That was back then. Okay, we don't do that anymore to the Jews who don't uphold the Sabbath. But the Quran, it has very strong words for the Jewish people. We need the Jewish people to be good Jews. That's the essence of our interfaith work. The better you are, the more you're upholding your kashrut laws, your Sabbath laws, the more there will be peace. According to the Quran. And forget what you hear outside the text of the Quran, because there is so much where the human hand has gotten in to damage relationship between humans. Thank you.